Alright people, welcome to the Critical Focus channel and today's review of the Skabbik's Plaguepack rival deck and the Warband cards obviously. First up, I am here to tell you that this Warband is a Chaos Warband. So if you're playing Championship, you will be able to utilize all the Grand Alliance cards from the Chaos faction there. And this Warband also comes with a plot card, and it reads as follows. At the end of an action phase, 8 players and or no one's territory are corrupted by your Warband if one or more of the following are true. 2 or more friendly fighters are in that territory, 1 or more friendly befoulers are on an objective in that territory. When a territory becomes corrupted, it remains corrupted until the end of the next action phase, even if this is as a result of a power card. A territory can be corrupted by multiple warbands at the same time. And a quick look at the deck here tells us that we have 6 searches, which is the new standard now, which is very welcome. We have 18 total glory in the deck as a whole, which is pretty nice, right? And we will bleed a lot of glory, so we need a good, strong total glory. We also have no spells in this deck. We have 3 fighter restricted cards in the upgrade allotment, and that's basically what you need to know before we go into each and every card in the deck. But we will start to look at the fighter cards. First up we have Skabbik Plague Seeker. He's a priest and a befouler, and he befouls at the start of each round, and then he staggers each enemy fighter adjacent to that fighter. He is 4 move, 1 dodge, 4 wounds. He is 2 range, 2 hammers, 2 damage with Grievous 1, and he inspires if 2 or more territories are corrupted by your warband, and that's also how every fighter in this warband inspires. I have already kind of reviewed the fighter cards in this warband in my previous look, in the first look we got of this warband leading up to the full release. So I'm not gonna judge them, as it were, in too much in this specific video, but I will still go over the warband cards. Inspired, he stays at 1 shield and has the same befouler ability, but his warp staff goes to 3 swords instead of 2 hammers. Rabidus is 4 move, 1 dodge, 3 life. He has the plague sensor, which is 2 range, 2 swords, 3 damage. So quite inaccurate, but pretty hefty in the damage department. He can also do a scything attack. It's 1 range, 2 swords, 2 damage. So pretty nice with 2 damage for a scything uninspired. And inspired, he's also befouler by the way. Inspired, his plague sensor goes to hammers instead of swords, and the scything goes to 3 swords instead of 2. Itchit is also befouler, and also it's worth to mention that everyone except the leader is a minion in this warband. So they are probably a very good candidate for something like the Beastbound Assault. Itchit 4 move, 1 dodge, 3 life. He has the befouler ability and also Book of Woe, which he can do a action with. So that's a fighter card specific action, which is worth mentioning because you will not be able to use that if you are, for example, Void Cursed. The Book of Woe action means that you roll 1 magic dice for each enemy fighter in the same territory as this fighter. On a roll of focus, you deal 1 damage to that fighter. He has the Plague Burner for 1 range, 2 swords, 1 damage. Inspires the same way as I said. Poxlick is not a befouler, but he is a minion. He's 1 range, 3 swords, 1 damage with Grievous, and he has 4 move, 1 dodge, 2 life. But he inspires to 3 life and goes to shield instead of that single dodge. So quite a tiny boost, but still a little boost. His Fetid Blades though goes to 4 swords, 1 damage with Grievous. So quite accurate. Rickit is a minion as well. He has 2 range, 2 swords, 1 damage with Grievous. Quite inaccurate and not very dangerous. But he inspires to 2 damage, but stays on 2 swords. So he loses the Grievous, but gets a more reliable damage output. He goes to shield and also 3 life inspired. Skritter is a little Dairat. He is a minion and a befouler actually. So we have 4 Befoulers in total here. He has 5 range, 1 dodge, 1 life. But he's also worthless, so if you take him out of action, and that's by an attack action, but also out of just ploys, right? Or if you run him into a lethalix, you won't give away any glory either. So if this fighter would be taken out of action, remove it from battlefield and clear all counters and persisting effects from this fighter. It is not taken out of action, so that means it is not worth any glory. So 1 range, 2 swords, 1 life with his infected bite. He goes to 2 dodge, stays on 5 move, and stays on 1 life, also for that matter. He stays on his attack profile, he's just not very good. In terms of attacking with at least, but he has other values as it were. So let's check the deck. First up we have Befouled. It's a search. You score it immediately after an enemy fighter is taken out of action by damage dealt by a friendly Befouler. So we have 4 Befoulers, so that seems pretty feasible, right? Next up we have Blessed by Corruption. You score it immediately after an opponent's activation step if a friendly minion is on an objective in enemy territory. So you don't need to hold it, so it could be just with a die roll, even though he's a beast, because it doesn't say hold. So that's ridiculously strong, right? We have 5 minions out of 6 fighters, and we just need to be on an objective token in enemy territory. But we need to do it after an opponent's activation step, so I guess that's the tricky part, but it's not really that tricky, is it? Rabid Harbingers is a search duel. You score it immediately after an opponent's activation step if your Warband holds 2 more objectives and 1 or more friendly Befoulers are on an objective token in your territory. So holding 2 with a 6-man Warband, where 5 at least can hold, seems pretty darn strong as well, right? Scuttling Horde is scored immediately after your Warband's 3rd or successive move action made in the same phase. That also seems pretty strong. Charges some moves, so yeah, that's also very strong. Spreading Filth. Score this immediately after an opponent's activation step. This is a duel. If there are 1 or more friendly fighters in 2 or more territories and 1 or more enemy fighters are out of action. That seems pretty doable as well, although not as auto-scoreable as some other cards here. Useful Distraction is also extremely strong. I've already reviewed it. It's a hybrid. You score it immediately after an activation step in which a friendly minion was supporting a friendly fighter, or a surviving friendly minion was the target of an attack action. So you basically just have to do an attack with any one of your fighters pretty much and have support from pretty much any one of your fighters, and you don't need to succeed with the attack, or one of your minions needs to be attacked. That's also, yeah, it's ridiculous. So I mean, all of these 6 searches seems really scoreable. This seems really promising, or maybe I should say maybe we will see some restrictions here, because this seems really strong. But yeah, let's see. Then we have a Leader's Privilege. It's a duel. You score it in an end phase if 2 or more friendly minions are within 2 hexes of a friendly leader, and those minions are in no one's or enemy territory. This is a bit trickier. I'm not sure how offensive you want to be with a leader, but it's certainly doable. It's just 1 glory though, so yeah. But I think it's good that not all of their cards are auto-scoreable. Bringers of Ruination is scored in an end phase if 3 or more territories are corrupted by your Warband. So you need to corrupt your territory, the opponent's territory, and no man's land. So that could probably be a bit trickier, but it's certainly doable. Corrupting the land, you scored in an end phase if no one's and or enemy territory are corrupted by a Warband. If no one's and or, that seems pretty darn strong for 2 glory though. Infected Corpse Pile is scored in an end phase, 2 or more territories are corrupted by a Warband and 2 or more enemy fights are of action. It's a little bit of a later card, but it's certainly very doable in the later rounds. Reckless Fanatics is a duel. It's scored in an end phase if there are 2 or more friendly fighters adjacent to the same enemy fighter, and 1 or more of those friendly fights are Befoulers. So we have 4 Befoulers, and we need to have at least 1, and then we could possibly have whatever fighter as well next to a enemy fighter. Yeah, it's probably reasonable with 2 glory. It's not something that happens a lot, but You could probably set it up. Ruinous Supremacy is scored in an end phase if your Warband holds more objectives than there are surviving enemy fighters. And that's 3 glory, but it's also really depending on what opponents you're meeting. If you're meeting something that has resurrectable fighters like the Sepulchral God, that could be really hard. It could also be really easy if you meet an elite Warband. So yeah, it is what it is. Expedious Assistance is the first attack action or defense roll made by a friendly fighter in the next activation has innate single supports. That does not mean that you have support. It just means that if you have support, you have an automatic success basically. Festing Sneak is choose a friendly minion, so everyone except the leader. Push the chosen minion up to 2 hexes. After that push, that minion must be adjacent to one or more enemy fighters and or a friendly leader. So this helps scores as a leader's privilege, and it also helps score us that Reckless, Fanatics, and possibly other cards as well, but certainly those two. Feverish Flailing, you can reroll 1 dice in the attack roll for the first attack action made by a friendly fighter in the next activation. Rerolls are always decent, right? I mean, plus 1 dice is better, but rerolls are, yeah, I'll take it. Manifestations of Great Plague, choose a friendly priest and roll 1 magic dice on a roll of channel or crit, so that's basically 4 out of 6 chance to cast it. The territory the chosen priest is in is corrupted by a warband. I think this is something we need to include. It's a very good odds ploy, and it can help score us corrupting 2 or even corrupting 3, those objectives that I mentioned earlier. Move, choose a friendly minion, the chosen minion makes a move action. Yeah, and it's restricted to the leader, but you know, that does just mean that you need to have the leader alive when you play it. This is obvious for most players, but it's worth mentioning. Yeah, I mean, free move actions are very strong, so, and it can help position us in ways to score a lot of these cards. Overpowering Odor's reaction, play this card during a friendly fighter's range 1 or range 2 attack action after the defense roll. If the attack would fail, and if there were 1 or more successes in attack roll, add 1 to the number of successes rolled by the attacker. Oh, this is an interesting design. So if you fail but you have at least 1 attack, you get 1 more success. Yeah, that could prove really strong. It's after the defense roll as well, so you don't need to kind of waste it before you know if the opponent rolls a crit. So reactions like these are pretty nice. Pestilent Blessing, choose a friendly minion. The chosen minions range 1 and range 2 attack actions have Grievous 1. In addition, the chosen minion is a Befouler. This effect persists until the end of the round or until that minion is taken out of action. So it helps get us corrupted territories out, but it's restricted to the priest, so only the leader can play it basically. Or if you make other people priests, but yeah. I think there's a card that makes the lieutenant a leader and a priest, but I shouldn't bank on it. But yeah, it could really be useful, right? Rancid Vomit, roll 1 magic dice on a roll of focus, choose an enemy fighter adjacent to 1 or more friendly Befoulers, deal 2 damage to the chosen fighter. It's pretty inaccurate, but when it goes off it's really strong. It has an odds to succeed that is 2 out of 6. I think that's a bit weak. But as I said, when it goes off, it's really strong, just like the old Rebound and all those cards. Unctuous Citations. Choose a friendly leader and a friendly minion. Push each chosen fighter 1 hex. It's restricted to the priest. Alright. Yeah. You need to have the leader alive. It's very strong to push, so I mean, it's very useful. Vile Blood. And it can help score those positioning cards and help get us into corrupting territories and whatever. Wild Blood reactions. Play this during an enemy fights at range 1 or range 2 attack actions. After the deal damage step, if the target would be taken out of action, -1 damage to a minimum 1 from the enemy fighter's range 1 and range 2 attack actions. This effect persists until that enemy fighter is taken out of action or makes a successful range 1 or range 2 attack action. Play this during, after the deal damage step, if the target would be taken out of action. So it's after the deal damage step. So it doesn't save us from that attack, but it debuffs the attacker, not rest of the game, because it's just until they do another attack. So it's not useless, but it's not immensely strong. Let's check the upgrades. Bursting Swords. Reaction: use this after an activation step if this fighter was dealt damage in the preceding action phase. Choose an enemy fighter within 2 hexes of this fighter, deal 1 damage to that enemy fighter. It's pretty telegraphed, right? But it also makes the fighter having this upgrade really unattractive to hit. So it's a bit bad, but it's also a bit good, I guess. Disgusting appearance is +1 defense, just straight up. It's no fight restrictions here. It's just a very good card. Glorious Sacrifice. When this fighter is taken out of action, if the territory they are in is not corrupted by your warband, that territory is corrupted by your warband. Otherwise, gain 1 glory point, then break this card. So that could really help us, like getting the mid-zone corrupted, because it can sometimes be tricky to have 2 fights in the mid-zone. So it's pretty cheeky, right? Both effects are great. Either you get to corrupt the territory or you get a glory. So win-win. Rotten Flesh. You cannot give this card to a large fighter, which isn't a problem in this warband because we have no large fighters. -1 damage to a minimum 1 from enemy fighters' attack actions that target this fighter while this fighter is in a territory corrupted by a warband. Yeah, it's okay. We need to have a corrupted territory, but it's also not restricted in how it reduces damage, because a lot of these cards are like -1 damage or -1 dice while adjacent and stuff like that. But this is it's pretty flexible and good. Screaming Lunatic is +1 damage to this fighter's range 1 and range 2 attack actions while this fighter has 1 or more charge tokens and or 1 or more wound counters. Yeah, that's very good. Just include it. While Fanaticism, +1 dice to this fighter's range 1 or range 2 attack actions other than scything attack actions. So it doesn't work for the Lieutenant Scything, but it's +1 dice is very good. Very, very good. So then we have the 3 fighter restricted cards. One is restricted to Befouler, so not all that restricted. Deal 1 damage to each enemy fighter adjacent to the fighter at the end of the action phase. That's pretty nasty. Yeah, okay. I like it. Pox-ridden Lucidity. Reaction: use this after this fighter's first successful range 1 or range 2 attack action in a round. Pick one. Draw 1 power card, or draw 1 objective card, then place 1 objective card on the bottom of your objective deck. Okay, so this is very similar to the Overthink that the Cunning Crew have, but that's a ploy when they get to draw an objective card and then put another one back. So you don't need to discard cards here, that's very good. And draw 1 power card can also be very strong, right? So you need to have a successful attack with Rabidus, Poxlick, or Ricket. And the last card here is Bound to Itchit, and it's called the Voice of the Great Corruptor. This fighter is a priest, so that makes him eligible for cards previously mentioned. If 1 or more friendly leaders are out of action, this fighter is a leader, and that makes this fighter eligible for pushing the leader, for example. And the other card that was restricted to leader. So, okay, so that's very good, but it's bound to a fighter that's pretty bound to die. But anyway, he will be able to do an action, and that means that the territory this fighter is in is corrupted by your warband. So, extra chances to corrupt, but it's bound to a pretty fragile fighter, but it's pretty okay, and if he's out of action, you can still salvage the card, right, as per the new rules. All of these cards are useful. Maybe 1 or 2 are a bit weaker, but none of them are really super occasional and weird. They are all just solid cards, and I think this warband would do great, and probably they already are doing great. So I mean, if you want to mix it up with the Beastman Bound Assault, as I said, that could probably be really, really good. But yeah, the rival deck in and of itself is also really strong. So have fun playing the Skabbik's Plaguepack. I certainly will. They are ordered and on the way. So I'm looking forward to painting them up. We do not get free stuff here on this channel, at least not yet. I'm doing what I can here. So thanks for the watch, I guess. This is Mats again, chiming in to thank you for watching the video. Please don't forget to subscribe, like and comment, and to not miss out on future content, ring the bell as well. And if you really liked this video, feel free to click the thanks button just below this video. And if you want to support me even further, you can now become a channel member and claim the title of Critical Focus Fan. Until next time, take care, bye.